Alright, we're gonna pick off where we left off on The Walking Dead in the book. We're gonna be on chapter 2. Uh, Last time, in the first chapter, basically they just moved into a new house. Some weird, like, a person that Amanda saw and thought it was Josh, and Josh wasn't there. So it was kind of weird. Petey was, the dog, was acting unusual than normal than they were because he was barking and being angry at Mr. Dawes, realtor. And apparently, normally the dog was very friendly. And we left off where Josh, the younger brother, and the dog are missing. And that's basically where we are now in chapter 2. There we go. Josh! Josh! First I called Josh, then I called Petey, but there was no sign of either of them. I ran down up to the bottom of the driveway and peered into the car, but they weren't there. Mom and Dad were still inside talking with Miss Dawes. I looked along the street in both directions, but there was no sign of them. Josh! Hey, Josh! Finally, Mom and Dad came hurrying out the front door, looking around. I guess they heard my shouts. I can't find Josh or Petey! I yelled up to them from the street. Maybe they're around back, Dad shouted down at me. I headed up the driveway, kicking away dead leaves as I ran. It was sunny down on the street. But as soon as I entered our yard, I was back in the shade, and it was immediately cool again. Hey, Josh! Josh! Where are you? What did, why did I feel so scared? It was perfectly natural for Josh to wander off. He did it all the time. I ran full speed along the side of the house. Tall trees leaned over the house on the side, blocking out nearly all the sunlight. The backyard was bigger than I expected, a long rectangle that slooped gradually down in a wooden fence at the back. Just like the front, this yard was a mass of tall weeds, poking up through a thick covering of brown leaves. A stone bird bath had toppled down its side. Beyond it, I could see the side of the garage, a dark brick building that matched the house. Hey, Josh! He wasn't back here. I stopped and searched the ground for footprints or a sign that he had run through the thick leaves. Well, out of breath, Dad came jogging up to me. No sign of him, I said, surprised at how worried I felt. Did you check the car? He sounded more angry than worried. Yes, it's the first place I looked. I gave the backyard a last quick search. I don't believe Josh would just take off. I do, Dad said, nothing rolling his eyes. You know your brother when he doesn't get his way. Maybe he wants to think he run away from home. He frowned. Where is he? Mom asked as we returned to the front of the house. Dad and I both shrugged. Maybe he'd made a friend and wandered off. Dad said. Dad said. He raised a hand and scratched his curly brown hair. I could tell he was starting to worry, too. We got to find him, Mom said, gazing down the street. He doesn't know this neighborhood at all. He probably wandered off and got lost. Mr. Dawes locked the front door and stepped down off the porch, pocketing the keys. He couldn't have gone far, he said. Mom's giving Mom a reassuring smile. Let's drive around the block. I'm sure we'll find him. Mom shook her head and glanced nervously at Dad. I'll kill him, she muttered. Dad patted her on the shoulder. Mr. Dawes opened the trunk of the small Honda, pulled off his dark blazer, and tossed it inside. Then he took out a wide-brimmed black cowboy hat and put it on his head. Hey, that's quite a hat, Dad said, climbing into the passenger seat. Keeps the sun away, Mr. Dawes said, sliding behind the wheel and slamming the car door. Mom and I got in back, glancing over at her. I saw that Mom was as worried as I was. We headed down the block in silence, all four of us staring out the car windows. The houses we passed all seemed old. Most of them were even bigger than our house. All of them seemed to be in better condition, nicely painted with neat, well-trimmed lawns. I didn't see any people in the houses or yards, and there was no one on the streets. It certainly is a quiet neighborhood, I thought, and shady. The houses all seemed to be surrounded by tall, leafy trees. The front yards we drove slowly past all seemed to be bathed in shade. The street was the only sunny place, a narrow gold ribbon that ran through the shadows on both sides. Maybe that's why it's called Dark Falls, I thought. Where is that son of mine? Dad asked, staring hard at the windshield. I'll kill him. I really will, Mom muttered. It wasn't the first time she said that about Josh. We had gone around the block twice. No sign of him. Mr. Dawes suggested we drive around the next few blocks, and Dad quickly agreed. Hope I don't get lost. I'm new here too, Mr. Dawes said, turning a corner. Hey, there's a school, he announced, pointing out the window at a tall, red brick building. It looked very old-fashioned, with white columns on both sides of it, double down, of the double-down doors. Of course, it's closed now, Mr. Dawes added. My eyes searched the fenced-in playground behind the school. It was empty. No one there. Could Josh have walked this far? Mom asked, her voice tight and higher than usual. Josh doesn't walk, Dad said, rolling his eyes. He runs. We'll find him, Mr. Dawes said confidently, tapping his fingers on the wheel as he steered. We turned the corner onto another shady block. The street sign read Cemetery Drive, and sure enough, a large cemetery rose up in front of us. Granny, granite gravestones rose along a low hill, which sloped down and then again into a large flat stretch, also marked with rows of low grave markers and monuments. A few shrubs dotted the cemetery, but there weren't many trees. As we drove slowly past the gravestones, passing by in a blur on the left, I realized that this was the sunniest spot I had seen in the whole town. That's your son, Mr. Dawes pointed out the window. Stopped the car suddenly. Oh, thank goodness, Mom exclaimed, leaning down to see out the window on my side of the car. Sure enough, there was Josh, running wildly along a crooked row of low, white gravestones. What's he doing here? I asked, pushing open my car door. I stepped down from the car, took a few steps onto the grass, and called to him. At first, I didn't react to my shouts. He seemed to be ducking and dodging through the tombstones. He would run in one direction, then cut to the side, then head in another direction. Why was he doing that? I looked. No, I took another few steps, then stopped, gripped with fear. I suddenly realized why Josh was darting and ducking like that, running so wildly through the tombstone. He was being chased. Someone or something was after him. Okay, chapter 3. I'm trying to do two chapters this time. Then, as I took a few reluctant steps, Josh, watching him bend low, then change directions, his arms obstructed as he ran. I realized I had it completely backwards. Josh wasn't being chased. Josh was chasing. He was chasing after Petey. Okay. Though sometimes my imagination runs away with me. Running through an old graveyard like this, even in bright daylight, It's only natural that a person might start to have weird thoughts. I called to Josh again, and this time he heard me and turned around. He looked worried. Amanda, come help me, he cried. Josh, what's the matter? I ran as fast as I could catch up with him, but he kept darting through the gravestones, moving from row to row. Help! Josh, what's wrong? What's wrong? I turned. Sorry about that. You can drink water. Had a little tickle there. Hey Josh, what's wrong? I turned and saw that Dad and Mom and Dad were right behind me. It's Petey, Josh explained under breath. I can't get him to stop. I caught him once and he pulled away from me. Petey! Petey! Dad started calling the dog, but Petey was moving from stone to stone, sniffing each one, then running to the next. How did you get all the way over here? Dad asked as he caught up with my brother. I had to follow Petey, Josh explained, still looking very worried. He just took he just took off. One second he was sniffing around the dead flower bed in our front yard. The next second he just started to run. He wouldn't stop when I called. Wouldn't even look back. He kept running until he got here. I had to follow. I was afraid he'd get lost. Josh stopped and briefly let Dad take over the chase. I don't know what the dumb dog's problem is, he said to me. He's just weird. It took Dad a few tries, but he finally managed to grab Petey and pick him up off the ground. Our little terrier gave a half-hearted yelp of protest, then allowed himself to be carried away. So it's interesting that this one has a terrier compared to the episode, which was more like a golden retriever type of dog. All right, back to the story. Peter's net we all took back on the side of the road. Mr. Dog was waiting by the car. Maybe maybe you better get a leash for that dog, he said, looking very concerned. Petey's never been on a leash, Josh protested, warily climbing into the back seat. Well, we might have to try one for a while, Dad said quietly, especially if he keeps running away. Dad tossed Petey into the back seat. The dog eagerly curled up in Josh's arms. The rest of us piled into the car, and Mr. Dawes drove us back to his office, a tiny white, flat roofed building at the end of a row of small offices. As we rode, I reached over and stroked the back of Petey's head. Why did the dog run away like that? I wondered. Petey had never done that before. I guessed that Petey was also upset about our moving. After all, Petey had spent his whole life in our old house. He probably felt a lot like Josh and I did about having to pack up and move and never see the old neighborhood again. The new house, the new streets, and all the new smells must have freaked the poor dog out. Josh wanted to run away from the whole idea, and so did Petey. Anyway, that was my theory. Mr. Dawes parked the car in front of his tiny office, shook Dad's hand, and gave him a business card. You can come by next week, he told Mom and Dad. I'll have all the legal work done by then. After you sign the papers, you can move in any time. He pushed open the door and, giving us all a final smile, prepared to climb out. Canton Dolls, Mom said, reading the white business card over Dad's shoulder. That's an unusual name. Is Campton an old family name? Mr. Dog shook his head. No, he said. I'm the only Campton in my family. I haven't no idea where the name comes from. No idea at all. Maybe my parents didn't know how to spell Charlie. Chuckling at his terrible joke, he climbed out of the car, lowered the white black Stetson hat on his head, pulled his blazed from the trunk and disappeared into the white small building. Dad climbed behind the wheel, moving the seat back to make room for his big stomach. Mom got up front and started the long drive home. I guess you and Petey had quite an adventure today, Mom said to Josh, rolling up her window because Dad had turned on the air conditioner. I guess, Josh said without enthusiasm. Petey was sound asleep in his lap, snoring quietly. "You're going to love your room," I told Josh. "The whole house is great." "Really?" Josh stared at me thoughtfully, but didn't answer. I poked him on in the ribs with the elbow. "Say something. Did you hear what I said?" But the weird, thoughtful look didn't fade from Josh's face. The next couple of weeks some seemed to crawl by. I walked around the house thinking about how I never see my room again, how I never eat breakfast in the kitchen again, how I never watch TV in the living room again. Morbid stuff like that. Okay. So that's interesting that in the book they were there for weeks, but in the show it seemed like it was all happening in just a couple of days. I think it was the first, yeah, just a couple of days. I had this sick feeling when the movers came one afternoon and delivered a tall stack of cartoons. Time to pack up. It was really happening. Even though it was the middle of the afternoon, I went up to my room and flopped down on my bed. I didn't nap or anything. I just stared at the ceiling for more than an hour, and all these wild, unconnected thoughts ran through my head like a dream. Only I was awake. I wasn't the only one who was nervous about the move. Mom and Dad were snapping at each other over nothing at all. One morning they had a big fight over whether the bacon was too crispy or not. In a way, it was funny to see them being so childish. Josh was acting really sullen all the time. He hardly spoke a word to anyone. And Petey sulked too. That dumb dog wouldn't even pick himself up and come over to me when I had some table scraps for him. I guess the hardest part about moving was saying goodbye to my friends. Carol and Amy were away at camp, so I had to write to them. Kathy was home, and she was my oldest and best friend, and the hardest to say goodbye to. I think some people were surprised that Kathy and I had stayed such good friends. For one thing, we look so different. I'm tall and thin and dark, and she's fair-skinned with long brown hair and a little chubby. But we've been friends since preschool, and best friends since fourth grade. When she came over the night before the move, we were both terribly awkward. "Kathy, you shouldn't be nervous," I told her. "You're not the one who's moving away forever. It's not like you're moving to China or something," she answered, chewing hard on her bubblegum. "Dark Falls is only 4 hours away, Amanda. We'll see each other a lot." "Yeah, I guess," I said. I didn't even believe it. 4 hours was as bad as being in China, as far as I was concerned. "I guess we can still talk on the phone," I tagged on. So I got it wrong. I thought they were both a couple weeks at the new place. No, they just went back for a couple weeks before they moved in. I think. I'm pretty sure that's how what I think what happens. She blew a small green bubble, then sucked it back in her mouth. "Yeah, sure," she said, pretending to be enthusiastic. "You're lucky, moving out of this crummy neighborhood to a big house." "It's not a crummy neighborhood," I insisted. I don't know why I was debating the neighborhood. I never had before. One of our favorite pastimes was thinking places we'd rather be growing up. "School won't be the same without you," she sighed, curling her leg under her on the chair. "Who's going to slip me the answers to math?" I laughed. I always slip you the wrong answers, but it was thought that counted, Kathy said. Then she groaned. "Ugh, junior high. Is your new junior high part of the high school or part of the elementary school?" I made a disgusted face. "Everything's in one building." It's a small town, remember? There's no separate high school. At least, I didn't see one. Bummer, she said. Bummer was right. We chatted for hours until Kathy's mom called and said it was time for her to come home. Then we hugged. I had made up my mind that I wouldn't cry, but I could feel big, hot tears forming in the corners of my eyes. Then they were running down my cheeks. I'm so miserable, I wailed. I had planned to be really controlled and mature. Kathy was my best friend after all. What could I do? We made a promise that we'd always be together on our birthdays, no matter what. We forced our parents to make sure we didn't miss each other's birthdays. And then we hugged again. Kathy said, "Don't worry, we'll see each other we'll see each other a lot, really." And she had tears in her eyes too. She turned and ran out the door. The screen door slammed hard behind her. I stood there staring into the darkness until Petey came scampering in, his toenails clicking across the linoleum, and started to lick my hand. Next morning, moving day, it was a rainy Saturday, not a downpour, no thunder and lightning, just enough rain and wind to make the long drive slow and unpleasant. The sky seemed to get darker as we neared the neighborhood. The heavy trees bent low over the street. "Slow down, Jack," Mom warned shrilly. "The street is really slick." But Dad was in a hurry to get to the house before the moving van did. "They'll just put the stuff anywhere if we're not there to supervise," he explained. Josh beside me in the back seat was being a real pain. As usual, he kept complaining that he was thirsty. When that didn't get results, he started whining that he was starving. That we all had a big breakfast, so that didn't get any reaction either. He just wanted attention, of course. I kept trying to cheer him up by telling him how great the house was inside, and how big his room was. He still hadn't seen it, but he didn't want it to be cheered up. He started wrestling with Petey, getting that poor dog all worked up, till Dad had to shout at him to stop. "Let's all try really hard not to get on each other's nerves," Mom suggested. Dad laughed. "Good idea, dear." "Don't make fun of me," she snapped. They started to argue about who was more exhausted from all the packing. Petey stood up on his hind legs and started to howl at the back window. "Can't you shut him up?" Mom screamed. I pulled Petey down, but he struggled back and started howling again. "He's never done this before," I said. "Just get him quiet," Mom insisted. I pulled Petey down by his hind legs, and Josh started to howl. Mom turned around and gave him a dirty look. Josh didn't stop howling, though. He thought it was a riot. Finally, Dad pulled the car up the driveway of the new house. The tires crunched over the wet gravel. Rain, rain pounded on the roof. "Home, sweet home," Mom said. I couldn't tell if she was being sarcastic or not. I think she was really glad the long car ride was over. "At least we beat the movers," Dad said, glancing at his watch. Then his expression changed. "Hope they're not lost." "It's as dark as night out there," Josh complained. Petey was jumping up and down in my lap, desperate to get out of the car. He was usually a good traveler, but once the car stopped, he wanted out immediately. I opened the door and he leaped out into the driveway with a splash and started to run his wild zigzag across the front yard. "At least someone's glad to be here," Josh said quietly. Dad ran up to the porch and fumbling with the unfamiliar keys, managed to get the front door open. Then he motioned for us to come into the house. Mom and Josh ran across the walk, eager to get out of the rain. I closed the car door behind me and started to jog after them. But something caught my eye. I stopped and looked into the twin bay windows above the porch. I held a hand over the eyebrows to shield my eyes, squinted through the rain. Yes, I saw it. A face. In the window on the left. The boy. The same boy was up there, staring down at me. That's right. Well, next time next. I'll try to do 3 chapters. So chapter 4, 5, and 6, and then see go from there.